Don't you love it when a video starts with a cup of gas? Anyway, I am back underneath my 928 today, so you can see it's jacked up right now. Basically, a long time ago this thing got bumped into and this plate had pushed into the gas tank and created a crack. Well, the problem is I've fixed it several times using the epoxy method and, you know, gluing these plastic squares to it and trying all kinds of different things, and nothing has worked. And the biggest problem is these tanks for 928s, they don't exist anymore. There's just none out there. So you can either spend a couple grand on a new one or learn how to fix the old one. So I've tried the epoxy route a couple of different times on this, no luck. So this time I am going to plastic weld it. Hopefully this works. Anyway, let's get started. This is Davin's Random. Here we go. All I know is that the gas tanks themselves are actually made out of polyethylene, and it's high density polyethylene. So the only way to really fix this is to weld it. Epoxy works for short periods, but it's only a quick fix. So yeah, we're done with temporary fixes. I'm gonna try to make this permanent. So the first thing I gotta do is disconnect this stuff in here. So I guess there should be a metal O-ring on the outside of this. No? Okay then, I guess that's a start. Wow, I think that rubber boot's a little worn out. Holy crap. Okay, well, that was easy. You can see where I have to disconnect it in there. There's like a little Allen bolt. You can see that there's another hose clamp there, but it's tied into this one right up here. So you can see that line. That should be fairly easy to do. So I'm going to disconnect that. Sorry for the noise, but my neighbor is mowing his lawn. Anyway, I was able to get that line off of there, and then this line, I did it over here. So those are disconnected. Pro tip. I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner, probably because the guy's mowing lawn across the street, but spark plug wire pullers are great for removing hoses. And again, I used PB Blaster on everything. I should tape this up here. I'll do that in a minute. And then now I'm onto the cover right here, this thing. So there's a 10mm bolt up here that I just took out. I can't seem to get the washer off of it. It's really tight. Another 10mm bolt up right here. So this thing just slides forward and comes off. There we go. Okay. And fuel filter. This is the line going up to the front. Pump going into the line right here. And then here connected to the tank. So it's kind of hard to see, but it's underneath there. I'd recently put in a new fuel filter and a new fuel pump, so really all I had to do is disconnect the main line from the filter and the fuel pump from the tank, and then the electrics on the fuel pump. And then from there, just drain 6 gallons of gas out of it, make a massive mess, and then I was able to go in and undo the basket. And there's only 4 bolts that hold the basket on. Once that was done, I could lower the basket down with a floor jack, and the tank actually stays up there because it's kind of press fit. Is the only way. It's a tight fit, so it kind of holds itself up, so you don't have to worry about the tank just falling down. But anyway, once you get it out, the next act is just pulling the breather hose through the body because it's kind of connected through there. So before I do anything on a car that I haven't done before, I always research the heck out of it. And in this case, I thought I was doing everything as correctly as I possibly could. I went through and cleaned the surfaces with acetone, then went over it with alcohol. I power washed the gas tank, and then I bought these high density polyethylene welding rods off of Amazon You can use any kind of high density polyethylene plastic. But the funny thing is, the lids that this gas tank is sitting on, these two bins, they're actually high density polyethylene, and I practiced welding on those for a while. And probably a good hour or so just to make sure that I had it down. And so I thought I had this thing completely nailed. One thing I didn't think about is the bins themselves are only 12, 13 years old, whereas this tank is pushing 40. So what happens is, you know, all the elastic polymers and BPAs have a tendency to dry out of these things. And I didn't take that into consideration. So I'm using a high heat welder that's pushing air like a heat gun. So basically, as the gas tank heats up, it's starting to tear instead of melt, which isn't good, meaning it's shrinking a little bit. And so I'm trying to stay on top of this by adding as much plastic to it as I can and melting as much rod as I can to try to get it to fill that hole. And this is where things got really nerve-wracking, because I thought, oh my God, what did I just do to my wallet? This is going to be really, really expensive. Because right now you can't find these tanks used anywhere. So, you know, until I find a used one, this is going to have to get me by. And now that I've got this gaping hole in the middle of it, it's not serving me too well. So right now I'm going to try to fill this hole, and hopefully I can get this thing to where it's structurally sound again. But I'm a little concerned. Well, it's a new day, and I filled it up with water last night, and it seems to be holding. So I brought out a flashlight so I can show you guys. So you can see that's the little nub on the inside. The biggest problem is, as I was heating this up, the polyethylene is so old that it was splitting and tearing back, and oh my God, was it bad. So now I put water in it overnight, and it looks like right here there's a little trickle wet spot. So I got to heat that up and do it again. So this is the end result. Looks kind of like a scab, but I had water in it for 2 days. Seems to be holding, so time to put everything back together. So this was the hose that was underneath that foam, and this is the line that goes from the filter up into the wheel well by the fuel neck, and this is the inline that goes to the engine. And this rubber was what was underneath that foam. It's in great condition, but I'm not going to take a risk. I am going to cut this off and put some new hose in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that just to be on the safe side. It's amazing how sometimes I'm so clumsy about this shit, but yet I don't walk away bleeding, which is a miracle. All right. So this is 5/16 225 PSI fuel line that I got from O'Reilly's, and it fits on here perfect. Now when you do this, make sure that you put on high pressure clamps, not regular hose clamps. These are meant for fuel injection, and they're the ones that look like the rings. They essentially look like the original clamps that came off of this system. Those are the ones you want. You don't want those banjo type. It's also really important to do this return fuel line. This isn't underneath as much pressure as the inline, but it gets up there, so I gotta cut this one off too. It's just camper top foam. It's the thinnest, most durable foam I can find, so it's just gonna have to work. So there's a few things I have to do back here. One is trim back this hose. It is just a little long. And before I do that, I want to reconnect these to the fuel pump. And so on here, ground is over here, positive is over here. It can vary from car to car. Just make sure you look on the fuel pump and it's marked. I did not actually remove the fuel pump from the brackets, so where the wires line up is where they're supposed to be. So anyway, I will connect those first, and then I'll trim this back and get this to line up, because it's like, I don't know, probably 4 inches too long. Better too long than too short, right? I also forgot to mention that I added a new fuel strainer to the tank itself. That's at the outlet nipple, and then I came back and trimmed down my fuel line a couple of inches to get everything to fit, and then got it all back together. And you know, putting the fuel tank in is a little bit of a fight, but it's not too bad. Well, this is what it's like to own an old Porsche. So my welding totally held, but now I've got a crack, and it's right, you can see it, it's right over here. It's just hemorrhaging out. It's like, oh my god. So yeah, back to the drawing board. I can't believe this. Found another spot where it was leaking, and so this was a very minor drip. Basically what happened was I put it in and started leaking again because it pinched this corner, so I welded this. Then I got some seeping from the top of where I welded it up here. I don't know if it was related or not, so it had to come back out again. So anyway, big changes from the first time that I did it till now are what I'm using to actually weld it with. And so this is the Chicago Electric plastic welding kit from Harbor Freight. I'm not using these welding rods because they're just not going to work. So I bought some polyethylene rods off of Amazon, but realistically you can use anything that's polyethylene to weld to polyethylene, as long as it's high density, because the tank itself is high density. But I really should replace this tank. I just can't, because there's none in existence. I might as well try fixing this one again. So I just wanted to show you guys how I weld this last go round. Now you can use black to make it not look so ugly, but I prefer white, simply because I can see it. I can see if it's blending really well, and there's like certain spots like right here that it didn't blend really well the first time, so I can kind of go over that. And this really was the torch that I was supposed to use the first time. So anyway, what I want to do right now is just kind of build this up. It's not leaking now, but I want to add a little bit more plastic to the areas where the pressure is at its highest, where the bracket sits, just to be on the safe side so I don't have to pull it out again. Although I'm getting really good at pulling this gas tank out. This time it only took me like 45 minutes. But you can see I'm just kind of heating up little sections of it and blending it in. Let me do that again here. And you want to get the plastic to where it's clear. That way you know it's fully melted into what you're doing. And this is not a perfect welding job by any means, but right now what I'm trying to do is add plastic to it as kind of a safeguard. And for those of you guys that are thinking, why didn't you look on eBay? I did. There's no tanks on there as of right now. So you can see once it's clear, and I'm just rubbing it in as hard as I can. And this time around, I'm adding to it. Now what I did before was, I'll show you on this bare spot right here, is I went in and heated it up with the iron to get that sort of melting, and then started adding to it. And basically, you're softening the original plastic and then just melting new plastic into it. That's really all welding is. And you can do this like a bead welder, but right now I just want to build it up. And I think this thing, there's a coupon for this plastic welder, so it was like $14 or something like that. It was pretty cheap. But this works way better than the 900 watt blowing air welder that I tried to do the first time. All right. So there you go. So I added about 1/16 of an inch of plastic to this. That probably will be enough. Gotta move the camera here. But you can see now my plastic area right here is clear. So that's what we're looking for. And then it'll start cooling down and showing me the white areas. But basically that's blended in pretty well. Let's get it to blend into itself a little bit better. Because anytime you weld plastic to plastic, you're making it essentially a little bit more brittle. So I don't think it hurts to add some extra plastic to it. Leak test this with a couple of gallons of gas. So I tried testing this with water before, and you know, the water held up for a few days, but the problem with water is I think it's actually a little bit more, it's not as dense as gas. So I think that if there's like a minor pinhole, water really wouldn't leak out of it unless it was under lots of pressure, whereas gas will just seep through anything. Let's see what we can see. I don't see anything. That's a good sign. So I'll let this sit like this for, I don't know, probably an hour or two, and then put it back in. Now it's putting the tank back in again. The toughest thing is getting the breather tube through the hole in the body, and then finding that sweet spot where the tank just kind of slides up into it. Needs to go in at an angle, but other than that, stuffing it into the crown at the top, make sure you get it all the way flush, and then the basket should fit correctly this time. So if I could add one more thing to this, I would say don't bother with the epoxy route. There's posts all over Renless and Pelican about using epoxy, and it does work for a short-term solution, but it is not a long-term solution. The problem with polyethylene is nothing sticks to it. So even though epoxy may hold for a little bit, maybe a week, maybe 3 months, but after that it's going to start leaking again. And I've tried several times, and the only way that you can fix these tanks is by welding. Alright, here it is 1 month later. Has a half a tank in it right now, and it's dry. So that's a good thing. So this wasn't the funnest project to do, but if I could give one word of advice, it would be just use the simple plastic welder that looks like a soldering iron. And you can even use a soldering iron if you need to, just use a screwdriver tip on the end of it. Just stay away from the high-powered plastic welders. But anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Leave me a comment, subscribe to my channel for more information like this, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you guys later. See ya.